What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode here, the Desai Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts on the side, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, the other half of Desai Guys, with Tad Desai. And Tad brought this up in our last episode, and I think people are going to be just waiting, I think, hopefully, for all of our upcoming episodes because we are going very headstrong with all of our fantasy content. We're just jumping right into it. We're making sure that as the fantasy drafts are coming up, within the next, month or so, that you're prepared, that, you're coming into your draft, you know who the players to get, you know who you can get based off value. You're looking at the sleepers, you're avoiding the bust. I mean, everything there to make sure that you're drafting a perfect roster. Well, as perfect as you can make it. Obviously, there's probably a lot of people that are going to be listening to our podcast, so they all have the same ideas that you have, right? But hopefully, you'll just make sure you're having the right notes. You'll be ready to go when your draft comes along. And then, of course, all season long, we'll have you covered with making the right moves to make sure that you're good to compete for titles, because that's our main goal. Mine and Tad's goal with this podcast is to make sure you're coming away with fantasy titles. So, Tad, we're continuing on with today's episode. We're going to talk about fantasy running backs.
Real quick. I'm going to interrupt you because some big fantasy news broke today to the point where, I don't know if you saw this, Matthew Berry had to deliver analysis from his living room because it looked like he was on vacation or something. I'm sure Matthew Berry has a very nice vacation house from the video. D-Hop to the Titans. We did a whole episode on this. I don't remember. I don't think either one of us named the Titans as a potential suitor, or at least we didn't go deep into it.
Yeah.
Can you trust him fantasy-wise? Just very quickly.
I think we brought him up as one of the potential, he had an interview plan with them. So he did bring up the fact that he was going to go visit them. Then he was going to go visit the Patriots. And obviously a bunch of other teams were considered, but it's hard not to trust him because now we talked so much about this Titans receiver room that's just the lack of weapons in that room. But now when you add another serious threat into that room with Treylon Burks now as your number 2 as opposed to the number 1, I think just gives a little bit more value to every receiver in that room. I'm not saying these are guys that you need to be targeting to be your starting wide receivers. DeAndre Hopkins is still going to be maybe a wide receiver 2 at the most. I don't see him as a wide receiver 1 that he once was, but I still think he has some value in that room because he's automatically the best weapon in that offense.
Remember, what kind of car do you drive?
A Tesla Model 3.
Tesla? Really? Yeah. I thought it was a DeLorean because it seems like you just time travel back to 2021. That is the exact same reasoning we use for Julio Jones. And I don't trust anything about this Titans team. And we'll get into this, regarding Derrick Henry with this episode, because I think I cut you off before you got there. We're going into our running back rankings, which were incredibly tough to do. But Derrick Henry barely made my top 5 because I don't trust Derrick Henry. I definitely don't trust Ryan Tannehill. Like you said, I don't trust Treylon Burks. Yes. Do I trust D-Hop the most out of anyone on that offense? Probably. But I don't know. I haven't done my wide receiver rankings. That episode is coming out in a bit. I don't even think he'll probably be in the top 24, but I don't think he breaks my top 15.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And we'll probably get into this a little bit more in our wide receiver centric episode. But I think just the biggest thing for me is just we'll leave it here, but just I know you brought up the fact that Julio Jones, we thought we could see the same thing in Tennessee, but I think D-Hop, where he is in his career compared to where Julio Jones was, where is in his career when they both joined the Titans, I think that speaks more volumes compared to, going to the Titans specifically. I said, I'm still a little hesitant. I'm not saying for sure, he's a guy that you want to be drafting on every single fantasy roster, but just like I said, I think he has a little bit more production left in him compared to where Julio Jones was in his career signing with the Titans at that time. So, I'm still a little hesitant. So we'll see what happens all there, but he is signed in Tennessee. It's still not confirmed, but pretty much it's a done deal.
Right. And now, speaking of, moving forward into the running backs, we should make it clear we left Dalvin Cook off our lists, off our rankings, off our sleeper, bust, hot take list, because it obviously depends where he goes. We pushed this off as far as we could. I was hoping, and credit where it's due, where I was like, he'll sign in the next couple of weeks, and you're like, no, he won't. You were right. Good call. So if people are wondering, like, oh, well, what's your Dalvin Cook take? We don't have one because we don't want to give one, because it's entirely team dependent. So Dalvin Cook will not be brought up on this episode, but whenever he does sign, then we will talk about him for sure, but not this episode.
Yeah, agree with that one. Yeah, as soon as he figures out where he's going to sign, we'll make sure to give you all the intel as far as how we feel about it.
Already, just do it.
Yeah, so we're going to see what happens there. But yeah, DeAndre Hopkins is most assuredly going to be a member of the Tennessee Titans. So we'll dive into that a little bit further in our wide receiver episode. But as we talked about, we're going to jump into running backs in today's episode. So very similar to our quarterback episode. So make sure you tune back to that episode after you're done listening to this one. Obviously, tune back to that quarterback episode where we delve into how we felt about our rankings for the position, our sleepers, our bust, and then a hot take in the position as well. So we're going to cover all that with the running back position here. But just like last episode, Tad, we're not going to go into our full rankings. We're only going to talk about the guy at the very top. But make sure, we did this a lot the last episode. Make sure you're following us on our socials because we've been listing, like Tad said, 1 through 24. And you see our Twitter and social media handles coming down there below. You got me at Desai 23, Tad Desai 94. The show
I'll post them on time, I promise.
And Instagram, the Desai Guys as well. So we'll be posting our full position rankings on there. So we're not going to go into the entire rankings like we did in previous years. So we're only going to talk about the number 1 in today's episode. But yeah, make sure you're checking out our socials for our full 1 through 24 for the running back position, 1 through 12 quarterback positions, and we'll give you the rest as we sort of get along here. But Tad, let's start here at the very top of the episode. Let's start with who was our number 1 at both the rankings. And just really quick, let's talk about how we did our rankings because that always makes it
right.
Even though we have the same player. I mean, just a little bit of a spoiler there, but your rankings are a lot different than my rankings. So, I mean, just as you give your player here, you can sort of give a interpretation as to how you did your rankings compared to how I did mine, obviously.
So, I mean, this just goes to show how good this player is because I do it how I think their season rankings are going to end. So like when you go back, and when I say you, I mean me, doing summer research, and you type in 2023 fantasy stats, this is how the list is going to look. What you do, another good approach, but just different, is where are they going to be drafted. But yeah, so I mean, I'm glad you said it was very similar to the quarterback episode because we did this on the quarterback episode. Hopefully next episode is different, but let's see if we can nail it a little bit better this time. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Christian McCaffrey. God damn it. We had to nail one of these.
See, I feel like, I don't know. It sounded for me like it was in line. So I don't know.
I rewatched the quarterback episode. It was not, but all right,
okay,
fine.
Fair.
But either way, yes, Christian McCaffrey is unquestionably the first overall pick in most, if not all drafts. Of course, you're going to have that one asshole that, takes a quarterback first overall just to be the hot take guy. But if you're that asshole, honestly, I respect you. But I think Christian McCaffrey will be the consensus first overall pick in most leagues this upcoming year, not only because, his rushing numbers alone are just out of this world. And I know you have the stats on that, so I'll leave that up to you. But even if you're not in a PPR league, his receiving stats will still help you because you look at what he did. So he was traded late November last year, and he had 65 targets, 52 catches on those targets, just under 40 yards, under 500 yards, and 4 receiving touchdowns. So even if, it's not a PPR league where you're not getting a lot of points for those catches, you were still getting a lot of points for those yards and touchdowns. And he's in that very weird position. Honest to God, I can't really remember a fantasy player that I've ever said this about, where the unsureness, I know that's not a player, a term. What's the word I'm looking for? The mystery. Let's go with that.
Yeah, mystery is better word. Yeah.
Let's throw a little Scooby-Doo in there. The mystery surrounding the quarterback controversy, competition, whatever word you want to use there, in San Francisco is actually helping his value. Usually that hurts value, but I'm taking that as a sign of that just means they're going to lean on McCaffrey more. So he's going to get more, targets, more rushing attempts. I think that McCaffrey at worst is going to finish as like the number 3 or 4 fantasy running back. Again, that is worst case scenario, barring any injury. But really, McCaffrey, I know he dealt with some injuries in Carolina, but I don't think that's really a concern with him, because it's kind of like what I brought up in previous episodes where with Tua in particular, where it's you got to make that distinction. Okay, is this a hamstring? Is this an ankle, or one of those injuries that tends to come back? Or do you just deal with a lot of freak injuries that just frankly suck? Like, speaking of, finding the right word, there's no better word. That sucks. And that's what happened to Tua. That's what happened to McCaffrey. So I think McCaffrey's injury history is not something to be nervous about. And honestly, maybe this is the hot take. It's not my actual hot take, but I'm in a auction league. My guess is he's going to go for as high as $70 come draft time.
That doesn't shock me that much. Like, I mean, the premium running backs usually tend to market like somewhere
60,
around that
70,
60, 65 or so. But yeah, the skill set that McCaffrey brings. And also, I think more specifically, Tad, we talked about this when we had the breaking news. It was just that he is so good at being a dual threat running back. And then you look at the system that Kyle Shanahan has, it's just that perfect match made in heaven sort of scenario where it's just like, you got the perfect running back that fits the system, and you got the perfect system that fits the running back. And it's like,
right.
We've talked so many times so much about Kyle Shanahan and his father as well.
Even have to give up a first round pick to get him. I'm still upset about this.
Pretty much it was most of our draft picks from this past draft in 2023. And then it was the second round pick in 2022, if I remember correctly. Or no, I think it's a pick in
it was
draft.
3 picks in 2023 and a 5th round pick in 2024, if memory serves.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Yeah.
Also, fun fact, if you looked up robbed blind, Christian McCaffrey's picture shows up in the dictionary. True story.
But I mean, we've talked about this so many times with Kyle Shanahan, that his father, Mike Shanahan, that just like, he's able to make something out of these, like, day 3 running backs, undrafted running backs, whatever it was, and he's still able to find success. Now you have a guy who's just so much better than all the running backs that he's had. Maybe you could argue Terrell Davis, obviously. Maybe there's a few others that you can sort of throw in there. But just for the most part, this is one of the most talented running backs that either of the Shanahans have had in their system. And to do what they were able to do with some of those other guys, to now do it with this guy, I mean, it's just like...
You put some respect on Clint Portis's name.
Hey, that's what I said. You could argue some other guys. I very much like Clint Portis as well.
I'm going to play this game.
But it's just so insane. Like, I mean, I'm still in disbelief that Christian McCaffrey is a member of the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, it's just, like I said, it's just that perfect match between philosophy, scheme, and the running back's abilities. It's going to be crazy as far as what he's going to be able to do now in a full season. Because like you said, sort of just a quick correction, you said end of November is when the trade happened. It actually happened end of October.
Are you sure?
It was right before Halloween. Yes, I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at it right now.
Damn it, it was 10-21. It was 10-21. You're right. Fuck.
Yeah. And so, even though that's still a good
Sean Marino.
Okay, that one, stop. It's just now that you have a full season of Christian McCaffrey in the system, you got the trading camp with him, obviously. It's just crazy to think just what other things Kyle Shanahan can do with him in this offense. And I mean, you talked about it, whereas like between two teams, he had a very successful season. He played all 17 games. I think coming to San Francisco, talking about like the injury history that you had, the Niners were good at managing. Like, he did get hurt at a couple of times, but the Niners were smart about it. That's like, okay, well, we have Elijah Mitchell, who's successful here. We have Tyrion Davis-Price, who is successful. We have Jordan Mason, who is successful too. So it's like, let's use some of these guys during the regular season where it's like, it's not as important that we need Christian McCaffrey all the time. Let's save him so then he's healthy when we definitely need him. So I think the Niners were smart to manage his workload as well, because like I said, just the system suits so many different running backs, and they want to make sure they can get the most out of McCaffrey when they definitely need him. But just, yeah, him in a full season in San Francisco in 2023. I mean, just, yeah, I think that's a clear-cut number one, both as a guy that you're drafting and exactly like you laid out, very, very good shot to finish at number one when all is said and done at the end of the season too.
Peyton Hillis.
Did Peyton Hillis have a successful
season? Peyton Hillis was the Broncos' leading rusher. I had to look it up. He was the Broncos' leading rusher in 2008.
He did. Yeah. Okay. That's how he got his fat contract with Cleveland. Yeah. That makes a lot more sense now. So, yeah. I think it's pretty clear here that it's just like, Christian McCaffrey's number one in both rankings here. But
yeah.
You brought some of these guys, Tad, your Peyton Hillis's, your Selvin Youngs, your Clint Portis's. Some point, Mike Anderson, some of these guys eventually became sort of borderline buzz here. So I think that's a good transition point here to talk about fantasy buzz here for the upcoming season. So Tad, who's a guy that you're just not as high on for this upcoming season that just, has that bust label just ready to sort of stick on them for the 2023 season?
Love the player, hate the team. Kind of took some very petty joy out of putting him on this list, but Dameon Pierce. It hurts. It hurts because you were high on him going into last season, and credit where it's due, you called it. He looked a lot better than I thought he would be. I did not see him as a viable fantasy option whatsoever, and he really had a ton of good I'm not even going to say like good flashes because he was so good consistently there for a while that I was like, okay, this is a fantasy, starter. This is a running back one moving forward. Unfortunately, I think there are just so many factors working against him. First things first is he missed the last 4 games of last season due to injury. So it's not an injury that's going to carry over into next season, but the injury concerns, can he play a full season, are there because we just haven't seen prove the counter quite yet. So that's a lesser concern there. A big, why are you giving me a face?
Prove the counter? What the hell is that supposed to
prove the counter being, no, I can play a full season because he's only had 1 season in the NFL where he missed 4 games. Prove the counter? You never heard that?
No.
Yeah, go.
I think you're pulling stuff out
of
that
is a lawyer term, my friend.
Okay, sure.
I think I'll need to reach out to my dad on that
exactly.
one. Dad, if you're listening to this, please confirm. But yes, we have yet to see him prove the counter.
Still pulling down, are you?
I lose so much money in poker. So, so much virtual money. I don't have any real money to lose, but
that's the truth.
No, trust me. Well, speaking of somebody else who has nothing to lose, though, is Dameon Pierce because they brought in Devin Singletary from Buffalo as well. I don't think Singletary will really step in as the number 1 back. But I do think that split's going to be very interesting to watch. And Amir, I did put this in my notes. I'm interested to see. I feel like we both agree on this, that CJ Stroud's transition in the NFL is going to take a year or 2 to really reach full potential. So, okay, so you do agree. Thank God. Yeah. It's very hard signing you up for a take without your permission. But with just all this, a rookie running back, another competitor in there, offense that we don't really know how it's going to work. We've assumed throughout the offseason it's going to look a lot like the Niners. If it does, maybe this take will age poorly. But there are just so many unknowns going in there that I think a lot of people are going to be like, oh, this is a sleeper. So that's why he's not a huge bust, because I don't think he'll go in the first 3 rounds probably. But I think a lot of people are going to be like, that's a potential sleeper. I'm going opposite. I think that's a potential bust.
No, that's fair. And just something I do want to bring up, though, to sort of counter your point here is that we talked about this in our head coaching series where we talked about D'Amico Ryans. And I brought the fact that, Dameon Pierce, I think, can be an effective runner. I actually like the fact that Devin Singletary is there because I think they'll take less of the load off of Dameon Pierce, where it's I liken it very much to what we saw in Cleveland with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, where it's Nick Chubb is going to be the guy who's going to pound the rock.
That was fantasy hell for Kareem Hunt managers, though. Because Hunt
too.
would go off for 15 points a game. And I'm sorry, I'm going to butt in here and then let you finish your point. Something to note, though, in the last I need to look up the numbers real quick. In 3 of his last 4 games that he did play, he didn't even crack 10 points. In 3 of those games, he only had 1 point.
So that's about Kareem Hunt, though, right?
No, that's Dameon Pierce.
Okay.
So that's now, granted, I will, kind of support your point a little bit before I let you get back to it, is that was under a different coaching staff. So maybe that split will be more well handled. But again, there's just so much risk here. It doesn't feel worth it to me. There are better options out there if you kind of want to take a flyer.
I think for me, it's just I can depend a little bit more on Devin Singletary compared to what he had last year, which is why Dameon Pierce got used a lot more. And especially as a rookie, is just he's still learning his way. Yes, he was effective and we saw him being a solid fantasy contributor, but I think there's also parts where it's okay, he could have read this a little bit better. He could have found the hole a little bit easier here. So it's just some of those things, it's hard to sort of gauge them because he didn't have the support, because he was playing with Dare Ogunbowale last year. He was playing with an aging. Of course not. There's an aging Royce Freeman was on the roster. Rex Burkhead was next to irrelevant in that roster too. But Devin Singletary, compared to all those guys, I trust a little bit more to sort of take a little bit of that pressure off of Dameon Pierce. And so that's why I like Dameon Pierce a little bit more. Now, I'm not saying that it's still going to be a home run pick. Like, so I still borderline and with you where it's like, I think he's more towards that bust label as opposed to being like a solid sleeper label, but I still think he's going to be a productive running back. So it's like, if you're grabbing him in those mid rounds, he's going to be a really good piece for you. But yeah, if you're trusting him to be your RB1, that's where the problem is.
Exactly. It's not like, he'll be a full-on bust. It's like the meter, right? Like, where is he laying on your meter? Like, this is and this mirroring cam thing's throwing me off.
For all you people listening, that's not helping.
This is your bust, and this is your, think of like your typical, like, speedometer, right? Like, the left side is 0, the right side is 120. At least that's what it is on my 13-year-old Jeep. And so, it's, if you have him more like over the 100 mark, I would lower those expectations a little bit because I think he'll be a solid running back too. Definitely a good flex option. If he's your flex option, that's a great gamble right there. But like, that's where your expectations should be. And I think a lot of people are expecting like, oh, he's Houston's #1 running back. It's like, careful about that.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. It's just like, understand the situation, understand where the team is going. Like I said, they're sort of rebuilding. We're not sure how this offense is going to look. So just tread with caution. That's all it is. But he's still very much draftable. Keep him in, like you said, I think that RB2 territory, I think that's perfect. Flex is, I think, a great option as well. Or yeah, if he's your first guy off your bench, then I mean, like, that's
that's perfect right there.
Exactly.
So all right, real quick, say the guy's name again.
Oh, who we had last year? Dare Agumbawale.
Okay, Dare Jambalaya. Was that close?
Not even close.
Damn it.
All right. So let's get to my bust. I think this is a bigger name that I think a lot of people may be surprised to hear. And it's Alvin Kamara, the New Orleans Saints. So
is it Kamara?
I think we've had this conversation.
We've had this like 3 times now.
Regardless of how you want to say it.
We'll run with Kamara. You said Kamara, right? I said we'll just run with that. That is show policy from now. I'll put in the bylaws.
There you go. So while Kamara is no longer going to be the subject of a possible, trial, possible arrest, possible fines, whatever it is by, the government or the state or whatever, right? There's still an outside chance. And the reason I say outside chance is because rumors is just like, there hasn't been anything decided yet. They're looking into it that he may get suspended by the NFL still. Because I mean, if you saw the video of what happened, like the fact if he doesn't get suspended, that's a topic for another day. But just there's some bad stuff that happened in that video. But just regardless, no news has surfaced yet about whether he is or is not going to be suspended. All we've heard so far after the news has come that the charges have been dropped or like disregarded or whatever it is, that the NFL is still looking into the matter and they're under investigation and they'll come out with a ruling hopefully soon. So who knows when soon is in NFL terms. So we'll figure that out when it comes to it. But all that aside, regardless of whether he gets suspended or not, I think there's other factors to this offense that sort of worries me about Kamara's production and also himself as well that sort of worries me. So if you look at his past 2 seasons, Tad, in 2021, he scored 9 total touchdowns. Now, if you look at last season, even worse, he scored 4 total touchdowns.
To emphasize your point, these are total touchdowns.
Exactly. So this is
rushing.
both receiving
and
exactly.
rushing.
Yes, this is both receiving and rushing touchdowns. So the fact that he couldn't crack double digits 13, in the past 2 seasons.
Hold on. So 9 plus 4. Carry the 1, divide the 2. Choose what's 2 squared? That's 4, right?
Yeah.
So 9 plus 4. That's 13. That's 13 total touchdowns over the last 2. Ooh, that's bad.
Yeah. And if you average that out, it's about roughly, 6.5.
No, wait. Now you're asking me to do averages? Come on.
So I mean, just overall, he hasn't been finding the end zone as much as he has in past years, obviously. Because if you look at 2020, he scored 21 scrimmage touchdowns, and he was just clearly like by far the best fantasy running back at the time. And I think that's why he went so high in 2021, but just did not live up to the production. Now, you could tie that a little bit to the fact that Drew Brees retired and they had some consistency issues at the quarterback position with Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill and Andy Dalton and Ian Book for one game too. So, I mean, it's just like, I think Trevor Siemian started for them one game, I think, if I remember correctly too. So it's just like,
God, he did.
A lot of issues under center for them. Now they do have Derek Carr, so hopefully there will be a little bit more stability in the offense. I'm not saying Derek Carr is going to be the perfect quarterback for them under center. I mean, they think they still have a lot of issues. We obviously know about Michael Thomas and his injury history, so if that's going to affect the passing game. I know they have Chris Olave. He's been great, but just without that support again, it's like if defenses start to target him, that's going to affect the offense too, that they could sort of just target Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara in the system. He also hasn't been healthy the past couple of seasons. He's missed about 4 games, 3-4 games, both seasons in 2021 and 2022 as well. So, I mean, he hasn't been able to stay on the field as much. And then I think the bigger thing as well that I see here is just that in previous seasons, he was sort of like the lone back. Like they had the shell of Mark Ingram. They had a few other guys that were just like, there behind him, but pretty much he was the main guy. So very similar to like we were talking about with Dameon Pierce, where it's like he was the guy last year. He didn't have a lot of support. Now that he has Devin Singletary, we'll see about the production now going forward. And so it's the same thing here. In the offseason, the New Orleans Saints have signed Jamal Williams. What did Jamal Williams do last season? He led the league in rushing touchdowns with 17.
He finished as the 4th highest fantasy running back. It was either 3rd or 4th. It was one of those. He was top 5. He was top 5.
He was definitely top 5. I can't remember where exactly he finished, but just he did that. Plus, he also had 1,000-yard rushing season. So, I mean, he had a fantastic season. He's now a member of the New Orleans Saints. And there's this guy who you love, Tad. Rookie Kendre Miller. I mean, he is joining the group as well. Just signed in the 2023 draft. I mean, Miller put up 1,500 scrimmage yards and also 17 total touchdowns for the TCU Horned Frogs last season. So, I mean, this guy is going to be dynamic as well because especially we talked about this before, and a lot of people are talking about it too, that if Kamara were to get suspended, I mean, not Jamal Williams, but Kendre Miller could actually benefit more in the system. So now you're adding these 2 guys on top of Alvin Kamara is just, I think they're going to spread the workload a little bit more. So it's just like, I see a lot more competition and a lot more touches being taken away from Kamara overall, but just from what I'm seeing, just a couple down years, like I said, I think the offense is going to be a little bit too reliant on other guys, not just Kamara. Obviously, we're just seeing the production drop. Like I said, I just don't know if I could trust this overall offense yet either with the new entry of Derek Carr, just the Michael Thomas questions, the rest of the receivers questions as well, outside of Chris Olave. So just like overall, I think there's too many other factors that just worries me about taking Alvin Kamara higher than where either at his ADP a little bit higher than that, but it's like I'm waiting on him if I want to take a flyer on him. But just him being that like fantasy RB1 that he once was, he's not that guy anymore.
Yeah, there's very little I can say to actually, by very little, almost nothing that I can argue against that point because, while we were making our rankings, Kamara actually had the most fluctuation with me. At one point, he was as low as 22. Then I moved him up to like 19. And then finally I was like, all right, that feels a little rough. So I moved him up a little bit more. If you want to find out where, like we kind of teased earlier in this episode, look at Instagram, look at Twitter. That's where we'll be posting our rankings. I still don't feel good about where I ranked him because I don't know where to put him. I could see him having a rebound season, but the ultimate deciding factor against, where I think he might go to where he is was exactly like what you said. I don't think he'll be suspended. So I'll fight you on that one. Is I think the NFL is going to play the PR game of like, no, we're still investigating. They're not going to do anything because they noticed during the Brady and Flakegate thing, during the Zeke Elliott, pick your stupid controversy when he forced the girl to flash or whatever. When the players don't get charged and the NFL still punishes them, fans get pissed and it leads to this like really bad PR campaign for the NFL every time. Justified or not, doesn't matter. It's bad PR. I think they've learned their lesson. So the fact that he will not be charged legally, I think will clear him for the NFL. I could be wrong there, but I think he'll play a full season. But exactly like what you said, I think his target share in both the receiving game with Kendre Miller and the red zone offense with Jamal Williams, because you got to remember that's where Jamal Williams is super fucking annoying for the Lions. Was every time I was like, oh no, they're gonna give it. Who's the Lions' other running back? It was DeAndre Swift. Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, DeAndre Swift is gonna get this carry for a touchdown. Anytime they were inside the 10-yard line, it was always Jamal Williams. That's why he scored like 18 touchdowns last year. So I think that Kamara's numbers are gonna be fine, but borderline RB2. And I'm just, speaking as an unbiased source here, is, really wouldn't shock me if Kendre Miller is a dark horse candidate for Rookie of the Year. I'm just saying, just for some reason.
Okay, that's lofty expectation.
Yep,
Let's temper that.
Sure. Hey, I was giving this hot take way back in December. Kendre Miller should have gotten the Heisman invite over Max Duggan.
Yeah, okay, that I'll agree with you. But
so
him being
he's a good player. That's my whole point. I mean, when has a Heisman winner ever busted in the NFL?
Too many times. But yeah, I think we could both in agreement here that it's just like Alvin Kamara. I think just his fantasy, like his heyday of being one of the top running backs in the fantasy world is sort of gone now. I think we'll wait to see what happens this year. Like I said, with more stability at the quarterback position, hopefully Michael Thomas stays healthy. Just overall, the offense is a little bit better. Maybe that could lead to him sort of regaining some of that, sort of fantasy stock that he once had. But if it's much of what we saw the past 2 years, then it's like, yeah, this is pretty much the end of the Kamara sort of like, run in fantasy circles.
And it was funny because when I was looking up, like, where do I put him on my rankings? I was actually pretty surprised. Was he had, I don't know the specific numbers, so if I'm a little off, please don't yell at me. Even though Saints fans are known for being rational. Is he had like 2 or 3 games where he had a pretty good game where it was, around 15 points. But a lot of his season last season was really balancing around like 7 or 8 points. And like, again, like those are barely like solid flex numbers. So yeah, I'm just not sure. Now you talked about this. Maybe that was due to the quarterback, not controversy, but lack of quarterbacks in New Orleans. But
yeah,
I don't know. New Orleans is another one, those teams like Tennessee, where I don't even know if I trust Olave all that much.
It's tough. It's tough for sure. Like, was his rookie year what we could expect to see going forward, or was that just an anomaly sort of season? So we'll see what happens. But just, yeah, I'm not trusting Kamara as much as I have in previous years. But let's get to the other side of the coin here, Tad. Let's get to the positive side, and let's look at some guys that I think people may be undervaluing. And so you could possibly find some fantasy sleepers here at the running back position. There's a lot of them out there as far as guys that could definitely, perform way above their ADP. That's sort of how we classify a sleeper here. So, I mean, just Tad, who's a guy that you're liking here to be a fantasy sleeper who could sort of outperform where they're probably typically going to be drafted?
This is even my hot take, and this is still probably my riskiest take of the episode. I think it's time to start trusting Cam Akers.
Okay.
I think it's time. Now, the reason this is a big risk, and this is why I'm okay with taking this risk, is it has very little to do with his performance on the field. It's all this, off the field bullshit, where we know his relationship with McVay in the front office is, let's say, rocky. I feel like that's the nicest word. He may have some other very choice words for it, but
Sure.
we're gonna go with rocky for now. So it could this entire situation could flip at a moment's notice. I'm gambling that that's not going to happen though, because they seem to kind of move. I don't think they get along, but I think they've it's like the coworker you really don't like, but you just kind of stand. Like, I think that's where they're at. So assuming they move past that though, you look at how Cam Akers finished the season last year. He averaged 5 yards a carry in the last 5 games of last season, averaging almost 18 fantasy points a game over those 5 games. And I remember, here's the crazy thing that I forgot. I really did forget this. Stafford and Kupp were not playing for them in those 5 games.
Yep.
So we did that with basically like a second tier offense. They had Baker Mayfield going for them one game. Like that, more than one game, but one good game. So good God, the LAFB slack was unbearable that night. But the entire point being, like, if he can do that with a okay offense, imagine if this is a big if, Stafford can stay healthy throughout the season. I think Kupp will be fine because, again, going back to the freak injuries versus nagging injury, that wasn't nagging injury, that was freak injury. Kupp's going to be good. Stafford, I'm a little worried about. But if Stafford can stay healthy for majority of the season, I think that Akers is really primed for a really, really big breakout season here, because people forget. I mean, we said it earlier in this episode, Shanahan gets all the love, as he should, for, creating these great running offenses. That's where McVay made a name for himself in the first place. McVay's first 2 seasons with the Rams, Todd Gurley was easily the best running back in fantasy football. He scored 13 touchdowns McVay's first season as a coach, then 17 touchdowns his second. Now, yes, Todd Gurley dropped off, but that was more of an injury thing rather than, McVay's fault. So I think the system really fits a running back very well for good production. And here's the ultimate, just the cherry on top of the sleeper Sunday, is the competition going against Akers is virtually non-existent, right? So Darrell Henderson's gone. He's a free agent. I highly doubt LA is going to bring him back. Sony Michel, okay, maybe finally, now 8th year in the league. Maybe now he'll finally live up to his, draft expectations. I doubt it. So really, Cam Akers is the guy in LA. So I think I'm not worried about his target share. I love the system he's in. I think that he will be drafted as a borderline running back too. A lot of people are going to see him as a flex option. I think he could end up landing in the top 10 at the end of the year.
Oh, top 10. That's lofty expectations for Cam Akers for sure. Because I do agree with you. Darrell Henderson, he's probably not going to be brought back. You brought up Sony Michel just not living up to expectations. I always wondered about that, especially that draft year when everybody was like, Sony Michel is the better running back compared to Nick Chubb. I was like, not based off what I saw. I always thought too. Like more. I was just I
thought they were comparable, but no, I always thought Nick Chubb was better too. But Nick Chubb's the one that destroyed his knee in college, right? Or
I believe so.
I always get the Georgia running backs confused because they had 5 good ones in a row.
Yeah, I think that was part of it. It was during that championship game where it's I think we saw more Sony Michel in that game compared to Nick Chubb, and I think that's what led to a lot of the experts sort of being like, "Oh no, Sony Michel's way better than Nick Chubb," and all this stuff. I was like, I don't know. Based off what I saw, I like Nick Chubb a lot more.
Hey, low key, a lot of people don't talk about this. The Patriots are not good drafters.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. But yeah, so he's coming back, but just I don't know how effective he's going to be. But I will say, I will throw in the fact that they did draft Kyron Williams, who they have a lot of promise for. So, I mean, we'll see what's going to happen with him. And they just recently drafted out of Ole Miss Zach Evans, who I think has a lot of promise too. So, I mean, I'm not saying
Zach Evans lost his job to I almost said rookie, to a true freshman at Ole Miss. And you know why I know that? Because he betrayed us and he left TCU, and that's what he gets.
Like I said, I'm not saying they're going to eat into his production this year, but just these are guys to sort of keep in mind as far as
if you're in Dynasty League, I wouldn't trust Akers all that much.
Dynasty League, and also just we've seen McVay sort of at times just sort of like you said, with this tenuous relationship that Cam Akers and the Rams front office coaching staff have, it's will he start to involve some of these other guys over Akers, even though he's getting more production out of Akers? It's that could potentially be something that I see there, right? But just I very much still like Akers. Like you said, towards the end of the season, we saw a lot more production out of him. It was just okay, maybe the relationship is healed because we're seeing him on the field a lot more. And he's being very productive as well. He was the clear-cut leader in rushing attempts as well as rushing yards. So I mean, it's clear they want to use this guy. It's just like you said, it's just that relationship aspect. It's if they can fix it and they can duct tape it and MacGyver it, and it's perfectly fine, then it's great. Fantasy managers can trust this guy. But we're starting to see some cracks in the seam, that gum is stretching out, the paper clips are breaking or whatever it is. It's not holding together. Then it's start to worry about guys like Zach Evans and Kyron Williams sort of creep in and take away touches from Cam Akers. So yeah, it's a very interesting situation to watch, but I very much like the fact that we're lighting it up under sleeper here, because that's exactly what a sleeper is. It's the potential is there. Can we rely on it? That's what I don't know.
He is. And if you're a friend of mine who's in my league, stop listening at 3642 right here. He's my favorite late round, gamble right there.
He is a good one. He is a good one.
Perfect guy to keep on your bench. The gamble doesn't work. Drop him after a couple of weeks. But if it works, man, you're going to look like a genius. So, if you're any of my friends, welcome back to the show. I hate doing a fantasy podcast sometimes. I give away all my tips.
It is tough for sure. But at least maybe you can take some solace in the fact that you're right. Because I mean that actually was brought up in the Slack recently, where it's I think it was our good friend Chauncey. He brought up the fact that it's why are you giving such honest tips? And I was honestly, part of me is instead of winning, I like being right more when it comes to fantasy football. So it's that's part of it.
Balancing winning and ego, which is a very weird dichotomy.
For fantasy, I guess for me it's a little bit more ego compared to actually getting the wins.
Kind of me too. I'm with you. So let's keep feeding the ego.
Exactly. So once again, sort of you talking about late round guys, and also maybe a little bit riskier guys. That's if it doesn't pan out, you can probably drop these guys. I'm going to a team that probably a lot of people are not looking at as far as a fantasy production level. That's the Washington Commanders, and I'm going to go with Antonio Gibson, a former high promise running back in fantasy circles until they drafted Brian Robinson Jr. So
we've talked about this in the last episode. You need to stop smoking whatever you're smoking. And if you want to give your stash to me, as a friend, I will take it off your hands and dispose of it properly.
And believe me, when I was looking into this, I was a little bit am I really going to give this take? But honestly, I looked into it further, obviously, as to why I sort of thought of this. And it sort of makes sense. Once again, this is why we're labeling it under the sleeper category. So Jerick McKinnon, during his time in Kansas City.
He's in Washington now?
No. Like I said, I'm sticking in Kansas City. So we're looking at last season.
Okay,
we're looking at last season.
Okay.
So Jerick McKinnon, last season, through the first 9 weeks of the season, he was the 47th ranked fantasy running back in PPR leagues.
Okay.
Now, if you look at the last 9 weeks, or the second half of the season, he was the 5th ranked fantasy running back in PPR leagues. And so you look at the fact that they decided to use him more as a pass catching running back. They also then used him as the dual threat ability as a runner as well. You look at Eric Bieniemy coming away from Kansas City to now lead the Washington Commanders. I think what I could see here is just big things for Antonio Gibson, because like I talked about, Brian Robinson Jr. is going to be the lead running back, but I think it's, once again, he's going to be more of that ground and pound mentality where he's not going to be involved in the passing game as much. Whereas now you got Antonio Gibson, who is way more of a pass catcher compared to Brian Robinson, that I think he could sort of do some of the things that Jerick McKinnon was doing for the Kansas City Chiefs last season. Jerick McKinnon scored 9 touchdowns in the final 5 games of the season. Like, I mean, that's just insane, the production that he was putting up towards the end of the regular season.
I'm guessing that's 9 total touchdowns.
That's 9 total touchdowns,
okay,
correct.
Gotcha.
But majority of them came through the air. So I will say that. So, I mean, that's
sense.
where it's sort of.
That's why when you said 9, I was like, he did not score 9 rushing touchdowns.
No, it's 9 total. I'm sorry if I missed that. But yeah, it was 9 total touchdowns. But just the fact that he scored 9 total touchdowns when, like I said, the first 9 weeks, he was pretty much irrelevant in that offense. It sort of speaks to the fact that it's like he developed a little bit more of that system. They saw what he liked and they started utilizing him a lot more. And then Isaiah Pacheco was still dominant too, just as a runner. So I was like, once again, I think you see the same thing here in Washington where Bieniemy could use Robinson as that like first and second down back, bringing Gibson on third down and then passing downs. That's where he sort of had his effectiveness. And like I said, sort of earlier, sort of teasing my part here, is that Gibson is a former, like he had a lot of potential because in 2021, he rushed for over 1,000 yards. And a lot of people expected him to be the guy in Washington. Then, of course, Washington did Washington things. They drafted Brian Robinson Jr., threw a wrench in everything there. But I think just with this change in offensive coordinator, I think I like what Eric Bieniemy, he did a lot of things in Kansas City that I think can bring a lot of production to Antonio Gibson, even though he's not going to be the quote-unquote main guy in Washington. Also, like I said, you throw into the fact that they're going to be using a young quarterback, an inexperienced quarterback in Sam Howell. So, I mean, because of the fact that we may not see what sort of like level they're going to trust with him in the passing offense. I know he's got a great bevy of weapons there with Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Logan Thomas at the tight end position. I mean, there's a lot of things that he can do well, but just we haven't seen it yet, right? So, I mean, I just don't know what we could expect for the passing offense. So that's where they may lean on the running game a little bit more with Brian Robinson Jr. and Antonio Gibson then on the ground too, and then obviously giving him the screen passes, those sort of swing passes out of the backfield sort of thing too. So, like I said, this is why it's under the sleeper category, because if he could sort of take what Jerick McKinnon was doing in Kansas City under Eric Bieniemy last season, and if that translates into this season with the Washington Commanders, Gibson's got a lot of potential, and he's going a lot later in drafts compared to Brian Robinson Jr. So I'm talking about immense value if you can grab a lot later, because once again, he's going to be a bench guy for you. He's not going to be a starter right out the gate, but if you get this guy on your bench and he eventually develops that role like I'm laying out here, that's just value sitting on your bench that you use as trade, or you automatically put him in your flex or RB2 situation.
I'm not lying to listeners or viewers when I say this, is when I first saw it, because yes, we've talked about this, we share notes, so I knew your hot take going into this, and I didn't look at your subsections. No, I just look at the player, and I'm like, okay, I can form an argument with or against that. You actually convinced me of this hot take.
Interesting.
So good job.
All right.
I'll tell you the 2 words you convinced me with, because I totally forgot this happened. Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah, I had a feeling you forgot about that one.
That man is my fantasy mortal enemy for reasons exactly like you pointed out. He will cycle through running backs like no one else will in the league. And that is so frustrating. And, you know, Brian Robinson, I'm not going to say he has injury concerns because I assume he's not going to get shot in a parking lot again. So I hope he doesn't. Let me rephrase that. I hope he doesn't get shot in a parking lot again. So but still, there's just so many unknowns with Brian Robinson. Again, it's the same case as who's the rookie we were talking about earlier with Dameon Pierce, where we have a 1-year sample. We just don't know. So, I mean, Brian Robinson could struggle in this new offense. It's kind of like, you know, there's a case of Alex Smith syndrome where if you're jumping from coordinator to coordinator to coordinator, maybe he struggles with that. So there's a lot of unknowns there. We know that Antonio Gibson is good. So maybe they go with the veteran, you know, guy that knows what he's doing to kind of take that pressure off Robinson. So, yeah, again, it's the exact same thing you said with Akers. Is like if you were saying, "Oh no, draft Gibson in the middle rounds," I disagree with you wholeheartedly. But in a late round flyer, you know, you got your kicker, you got your defense. All right, let's shore up this bench. That's a great one to take.
100%. So coming towards the end of the episode here, Tad, we got to close this out.
Sorry, this just occurred to me. He is a great trade piece. People, listen to me. With this upcoming season, I am your trade master. I am your trade Mr. Miyagi. Okay? I don't know if that's cultural appropriation, but I'm going for it. So, whatever. Shut up. So, here's how you pull off some of these trades is have Gibson on your bench. Gibson goes off for like 15. I think Gibson will have like kind of a Kareem Hunt role where he goes off for 15 points. That's when you trade him that Tuesday.
It's very true. Like I said, he could be a valuable trade piece depending on
all about that timing, people. It's all about that timing. Listen to me.
So as we're sort of getting to the end of the episode here, we like to close it out with a sort of fantasy hot take at the position
Slap the
here,
water.
Tad. So, I mean, let's see here. Tad, do you have a fantasy hot take for the running back position here in 2023?
Murray, you know I'm not taking in these drafts?
Let's hear it.
I'm not taking a goddamn rookie.
Wow. Okay. Any rookie. Any rookie. Wow. Okay.
Stay away from all of them.
I'd kind of like to hear your reasoning behind this one.
All right. Well, we already talked about this on the podcast a little bit. I don't trust Bijan Robinson fantasy-wise nearly as much as some people do. And I don't really look at ADP rankings. I know some of them are starting to come out now that we're in mid to late July. I don't really start looking at them until early August. But my guess is that Bijan's going to be a second or third round pick in a lot of these leagues. And that is a massive mistake. Because, yes, I know Arthur Smith probably took him to be the new Derrick Henry. But let's not forget, this is also the person that took Cordero Patterson out of the edge of the field and put him at running back. Like, we have no idea what this man is doing. This is also a guy that told Peter Skronsky that he was too boring. Like, he's a weird dude. So I don't trust Arthur Smith's system. I don't trust the Falcons' offense in general. Let's say Bijan does get a majority of the carries. I doubt they're going to be efficient enough to really, provide that fantasy output at fantasy running back to be a good running back one, maybe running back two, but I don't even know if I trust him at that point. So by the time most of your other league mates are drafting Bijan Robinson, it's probably going to be too early. Now, if you're, I don't know, 5th, 6th round, sure, then I would draft him, but I think he's going to be gone by then. So I'm not taking Bijan. Who else is out there? Shane and Miami. I'm not trusting anyone in that Miami backfield, especially because, like we talked about earlier, they may land Dalvin Cook. So God knows how that split's going to go. And even if they don't land Dalvin Cook, still, God knows how that split's going to go. Dwayne McBride in Minnesota, one of my coworkers is convinced that he's going to take over for Alexander Madison. Now, I think that could be a thing next year or 2 years down the road, but I don't think that'll happen this year. So Dwayne McBride's out of the question. Who's the Rams guy? Zach Evans. He's a joke. Get out of here. He's not draftable. I don't know. Just start listing off rookies. Kendrick Miller. Look, I love Kendrick Miller. I think he will be, in the running for rookie of the year. I really do believe that. I don't think he will win it. I think he'll be in the running, but I think he'll be a lot like Kareem Hunt, where he'll have a couple good games, but then he'll score 1 and 2 points throughout a couple weeks. So he's not fantasy trustworthy. Shout out some other rookie running backs. I'll tear them apart.
Tank Bigsby in Jacksonville.
No, Travis Etienne is going to be the guy there, and Travis Etienne is going to eat into any chance that Bigsby has to be a dual threat, because what is Travis Etienne? A dual threat. Next.
Zach Charbonnet, running back in Seattle.
Get the fuck out of here. What is with you in Seattle running backs? This is Kenneth Walker III, your boy, by the way, they're going to, cannibalize each other. Like, I think Charbonnet will be a fine fantasy option to have on your bench in case someone gets hurt. But if you are drafting him over, let's say, a Cam Akers, you are clinically insane. Next.
Roshan Johnson in Chicago.
Behind Deontay Foreman and Khalil Herbert, get out of here.
All right.
That man will be lucky if he even gets 30 carries on the year.
All right. So those, I think, are probably the bigger names that I could sort of list off here as far as running backs drafted.
Tyler Spears. There's another one. He's behind Derrick Henry. Shut up.
Okay. Fine. But
I just told myself to shut up, but whatever.
Yeah, a little bit there. But yeah, I think that's very interesting, because it's like, I understand everything that you're saying about Bijan, but just like, I think it's just hard to sort of, equalize the fact that it's like he was taken so high over some of their other position of need. So it just sort of speaks to the fact that it's like, I think they sort of see this guy as sort of being their focal point of the offense.
Okay.
And it's like,
what if he doesn't work out though? They have so many other good it's not like, if he works out or if he doesn't work out, we're fucked. It's like we have 2 other proven options in this off. That's why I hated this draft pick. I don't know. He'll probably make me look like a moron, but whatever.
Because I can agree with you that probably all other rookie running backs, it's hard to sort of trust them. But Bijan, that's like clearly for me. That's fair. And that's right. That's why it's a hot take, right? I mean, you're sort of laying this out here. It's like, I don't believe it. And so, yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Because, I'm on the other side of the fence on that one. I think Bijan Robinson is going to have a great year. So I think that's just different though there. But it's funny there because we kind of talked about Roschon Johnson in Chicago. That sort of leads to my fantasy hot take here. And it's the guy that you sort of listed out there at the very top of the chart there. It's Khalil Herbert. And I think he finishes as a top 12 fantasy running back here in 2023. Right. So you look at David Montgomery last season. He had 72 more carries than Herbert last season, but he only finished with 1 more rushing touchdown than Herbert. And also he only finished with 70 more rushing yards than him. But you look at the other side, Herbert finished with better yards per attempt average compared to David Montgomery. So he was rushing 5.7 yards per attempt, whereas David Montgomery is only rushing 4. So that sort of speaks to the fact that Herbert's just more efficient with the ball in his hands compared to what David Montgomery was doing last season. And we all know how terrible that offensive line was in Chicago. So the fact that Herbert was able to do that sort of speaks to the skill set that he's bringing to this offense. Then let's look at just the overall offense. Like we know Justin Fields sort of took this offense, put it on its back, became just a sensational rusher, not just a quarterback under system there. But the Chicago Bears led the NFL in rushing yards last season, and they ranked 2nd in rushing attempts. And they only trailed rushing attempts to the Atlanta Falcons by 1 attempt. So the Atlanta Falcons had 559 attempts. The Chicago Bears had 558 rushing attempts. So it was very, very neck and neck right there. Herbert had 5 games last season where he scored double-digit points, but he only started 1 game in 2022. So, I mean, this guy clearly just was more effective with the starts that he had. I mean, just the 1 start that he had, but just overall just playing in games, he just looked a lot more dynamic in that offense compared to Dave Montgomery. That sort of speaks to the fact as to why Dave Montgomery is now playing in Detroit as opposed to Chicago there. Currently, what I'm seeing here, Tad, based off just rankings that I'm looking at other websites, is like I know we're still formulating our rankings, hasn't been released yet, but I mean, make sure you're following us on social. That will be coming up pretty soon. He's being drafted somewhere like around the 36th running back taken off the board. And so the fact that you're seeing
out of here.
I swear, this is what I'm seeing around that 36. As far as the position, I'm saying. So
where's my paper and pen?
Exactly. So it's just like you look at this fact that it's just like I said, I think the involvement that he's going to have in this offense, like I said, for him to finish in the top 12, that's triple where his ADP is going to be. So it's like just the fact that you're getting that immense of a value, like we talked about this with Antonio Gibson, like the fact that you could get Khalil Herbert maybe around that same range where it's like you're getting him in sort of like those mid rounds where it's like you have some good value, but he's going to give you RB1 production. Like, I mean, that's just insane to me because, I mean, it's like this overall offense is going to be a lot better. We already talked about how they traded for DJ Moore. They also got Cole Kmet had a good season, obviously. They upgraded their offensive line to an extent. Justin Fields hopefully is going to take another step. I mean, just overall, this offense is going to be a lot better. And with Khalil Herbert in the backfield, he's going to be on the forefront of how this offense is going to change and be a lot better. So, I mean, I think he's going to be involved quite a bit. They want to run the ball a little bit more. I know Deontay Foreman and we talked about Roschon Johnson. They're there. But I think just Herbert has the better talent level compared to those other 2 guys where he's going to get majority of the carries, maybe sprinkle in a little bit of the other 2 guys, but just Khalil Herbert for sure is going to be the main guy, and he's totally going to break out this season.
I mean, I didn't want to like poo-poo on this take because I don't know how hot of a take it is. I agree with you 100%. And that was the thing, but I want our listeners and viewers to, come in with your own comment. Is it a hot take? Because if you agree with it, it doesn't seem like it, but this might be a hot take to others. But I completely agree. I cannot believe that stat you just shared. 36 ADP at his position, right? Not just overall position.
At his position, correct.
If I can land Khalil Herbert and Cam Akers both on my bench with 2 other starters that I know, like I can trust, oh my God, I will for once in my life walk away from the draft without anxiety. Like that will be, you just made me very, very excited for draft season. Again, God damn it. I just gave away my plan, but whatever. But yeah, no, I think because I mean, there are 1,000 stats I had last year that I shared about this, but exactly like what you said is when Khalil Herbert stepped in this offense, that's not only when Khalil Herbert was doing better, that's when Justin Herbert started doing better because it's just, Justin Fields, Justin Herbert. God damn it.
Although, as a good fantasy stack, I'm going with the Herbert to Herbert plan of Justin Herbert and Khalil Herbert, to be honest with you. So,
Yeah, it's not bad. But no, sorry, you are correct. I was getting my Justins mixed up. It's 11 o'clock at night. Leave me alone. That's when Justin Fields started doing better because it wasn't just like, let Fields run around for his life for 10 seconds and hopefully he gets positive yards out of it. It was okay. Now we have this more dynamic offense. And yeah, exactly like what you said, Khalil Herbert caught up to David Montgomery's stats very quickly, which tells me in a full season, he will exceed them very quickly. So I love Khalil Herbert as a sleeper. Spoiler alert, he was my pick for sleeper. I saw your hot take. I was like, all right, I need to find another sleeper. So now I think you and I are both very, very high on Khalil Herbert. I'm a little worried about Deontay Foreman eating into his target share, but I'm trusting Eberflus to make the right call and be like, no, Herbert's our dude.
Yeah. And I can understand how maybe it's not the hottest take, but like I said, I guess for me,
I think it's a great hot take. The problem is I agree with the hot take. So that's
for me, the reason that I labeled it a hot take is because, like I said, that ADP at his position being 36th, that's just telling me that he's just completely going to outperform that. So that's why I sort of took it as a hot take, finishing in the top 12. That's pretty much RB1 territory. Because if you play a 10-man league or a 12-man league, that's RB1 territory right there. Either low 1 or 100% on RB1. So that's why the fact that him going at the 36th position, like I said, for him to finish in the top 12, that's sort of like, can that be done? I think it can.
I have to imagine that's going to fluctuate more the closer we get to August.
It's possible.
That's crazy to me. 36 guys. Yeah, no. I mean, spoiler alert. Hold on, let me look at my rankings real quick. He is, and I felt bad for putting him this low. He is where is he? Oh, did you not make my top 24? I may need to fix that. No, all right. He's number 23 for me. He's number 23. But again, that was Deontay Foreman concerns there. So, but even then, I was like, God, 23 seems so low for him. Like, I wanted to put him in the top 15, but there's so many good running backs out there that he just was one of those guys like just kept getting forced down. But like, it physically hurt me to put him 23. Bijan Robinson's 24, by the way. That physically hurt me more.
That's an interesting one. So we sort of have a tease on some of our rankings here, but just as we sort of talked about throughout the entire episode, if you want to see...
Oh, by the way, last good sleeper, Jonathan Taylor, baby.
I don't know about a sleeper on that one, but...
people are going to forget about him.
Maybe. But I think if you want our full rankings, make sure you're seeing all of our social media handles that are coming right down below. You got us on Twitter. You got me at Desai23. You got Tad Desai94. You got the show handle at the Desai Guys. And of course on Instagram at the Desai Guys as well. We're releasing our full rankings for the running position from 1 through 24. And we'll be releasing our quarterback rankings 1 through 12 there, as well as the other position groups once we sort of get to those a little bit later down the road here. But guys, we'd appreciate all of you tuning in for today's episode. Like we said, we're going headfirst into all fantasy content now. We want to make sure that you're prepared for all your drafts whenever they're coming. So make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. You're always up to date with our podcast, whether that's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. You can listen right on the LEFB Network website as well. Subscribe. Always be up to date with our podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, so you're always up to date with those. And I think first and very importantly, you have to make sure that you're supporting our parent network, LEFB Network. They got a lot of great content for you when it comes to the Rams and the Chargers at the NFL level. And of course, college football season is going to be here 1 week sooner than the NFL season. So, I mean, that's going to be very soon as well. They got you covered on the LA college football teams there with USC and UCLA, the Bruins and the Trojans there. So, I mean, yeah, they got you covered on all four fronts there at the NFL and the college level. So make sure you give them a like, a subscribe on social medias, on YouTube, on their podcast if you want great content there. But guys, to everybody who's already like interacting with us on social, because we beat it. Interact with us. We want to help you win your leagues. We want to help you prep for your drafts. We want to help you with trade decisions. I mean, Tad makes, I think, probably at least 5 trades a season with each league that he's in. So, I mean, it's like
5?
At least, what? Like I said, at least 5.
Is this rookie season? Come on. I finished 5 before week 5. Like,
exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, if you need trade help, come to Tad for sure. But just, guys, interact with us.
Don't ever insult me like that again.
No, that's true. It's true. I felt a little bit low with the 5, but I was like, I'll just play it safe and say 5 here. But yeah, interact with us. We want to hear your thoughts on, like, you know, when the season begins, like waiver thoughts and trade thoughts and, you know, adjusting your roster, start sits, everything we'll be providing to you, but we'll take personal questions as well in our DMs, as well as hitting us up on just our timelines as well. So make sure you're doing that through the season and in the off season here before your draft starts too. But guys, to everybody who's already interacted with us, who's subscribing to our podcast and YouTube, who's listening, following, just anything and everything in between, guys, we really can't thank you enough.
And don't forget, we got 3 more episodes of these rankings coming out. We got our top 24 receivers coming out this next episode. Then we got our top 12 tight ends and our top 12 defenses.
Hey,
oh my God,
I forgot kickers.
Well, defenses and kickers are the same episode, so that's why I'm combining them. So anyway, but we have a lot more rankings coming out. So if you are a little concerned about like, and particularly me, I always suck at drafting receivers, not kickers. Kickers is easy. Just take whoever's kicking Denver, just take them. Don't take Jake Moody. Don't take Jake Moody. That's a mistake. But sorry, buddy. But oh, come on, that was funny. That was the best moment from the draft, easily. But either way, so we have all these rankings coming out. So if you are still worried about those, don't worry about it. It's coming out in the next couple of weeks, and we'll have all of them out before August gets here, so that you are fully prepared for your draft. Unfortunately, we are not doing any IDP players, but like Amir said, if you have any IDP questions or more individualized questions, I had a buddy hit me up 2-3 days ago about a trade that he received because he's in a dynasty league. I'm not going to give you guys my phone number for obvious reasons, but I do check out YouTube comments almost every single day. So you comment on YouTube, I will see them. If you hit us up on Twitter, Amir will probably see it before I do, but I'll get there eventually. Facebook, Instagram, all those sites. We love to interact with you, and I know fantasy football can be very individual specific. So please do not feel shy for reaching out for any advice you need, because we care about you. I want you to win that trophy this year. I want to win the trophy this year. Amir, stop listening to this because I'm not speaking to you. But I want nothing but the best for you guys.
You can win the trophy in your own league, but any leagues we're competing together, forget it.
No, you shut it. After all the crap that Al gave me, I'm winning the league this goddamn year. But yes, that competitive nature of me, trust me, I feel for you guys too. So hit us up. As always, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. And please stay safe, everyone.